Right, so you might be wondering why I have the most Nigel Farage
Imposter.
title of all time. But listen, I have a reason. I promise I haven't gone red pilled on you. Everyone always says that immigrants are the problem, that foreigners suck and they're coming over and they're taking all the jobs, they're taking all the houses and everything. But listen, there's a real impact going on, and it is being portrayed. It is being done by foreigners, but it's not the foreigners that you think. Did you know that the Qatari Foreign Investment Fund owns about 23 million square foot of London, which includes a huge chunk of Canary Wharf, the Chelsea Barracks, and the entire fucking Shard? Yeah, and you see this guy over here? He only owns about 7 million square feet. So that means that the dude that runs Qatar owns more of our capital city than we do. The question is, how are they stealing our money? Think of it this way. The Qatari Investment Fund has about £18.2 billion worth of hotels, real estate, and businesses in the UK. And despite owning almost $20 billion worth of our country, our government has decided that any investments made by a sovereign wealth fund don't pay a penny in tax because they don't live in Britain. Basically what that means is, in Qatar, they're generating billions of pounds worth of revenue from British labour, British assets, and British housing that could otherwise go to British people. And instead of giving their fair share back to the British government that protects those assets with the British Army, staffs their companies with British workers, and ensures that their goods are brought by British consumers, they take it all back to Qatar. Which doesn't make any goddamn sense. It doesn't make any sense.
Why do you have a cock ring around your neck?
Jesus, we know it's not a cock ring. If you have a cock that, well, no, I don't think I could even fit this around my cock. So anyway, this whole thing isn't just the Qataris, okay? There are other sovereign wealth funds that have significant holdings in the United Kingdom. And the other thing that I don't want to forget mentioning is that currently, this is crazy, American lobbyists are working with members of the Reform and Conservative parties to essentially turn our NHS private by making it shitter so they can bring their private healthcare into our country and expand their influence outside of the US. Charles's fingers, dude, they're so suckable. So all of this basically means that our boat has a massive leak, and the culprits are all over the world. Now, the estimates suggest that because of all of this evasion and all of these weird little tax loopholes, we lose about £3 billion a year. Editor's note, I'm not sure where I was getting my numbers from here, but I just looked it up, and the actual number is closer to 17.5 billion. This is based on applying a 25% corporate tax, which is standard for private companies in the UK, to the $70 billion generated by SWFs each year. The rest of the logic still applies, but imagine I say 17.5 instead of 3 every time I say okay. And this is just, the stuff that sovereign wealth funds take, If we're talking about tax evasion and avoidance and stuff in general, that figure balloons incredibly. But I really cannot tell you, I cannot stress enough how understated that figure is, because it's based only on publicly available information. And it completely ignores the increase in value of these assets over time. If a completely private company buys a completely private asset, they do not have to disclose how much that asset was worth, how much they paid for it at all. Which means that these sovereign wealth funds, like the example that I gave earlier is the Savoy, it's 50% owned by the Qataris and 50% owned by another private company. Although we know that they own this hotel, they haven't got any publicly available numbers on it, which basically means that we can't include any of that in that assessment. So this is the bottom shelf. We're probably underestimating that number by 2 to 10 times. So what do we do? Well, there's one law that we can put in place to stop this massive leakage, and there's one that we can use to ensure that we remain an attractive country to investors. Because I will admit that if you just crack down on all of this stuff, it does rock the boat when it comes to attracting foreign investment.
Back the way you came.
which is an essential part of, how an economy can operate. The first thing we need to do is get rid of exemptions for foreign investment. Foreign investment is only good when the relationship is mutual, and they should at the very least pay tax on their assets if they're going to use our resources to generate profit. Now, the immediate problem with this law is that it makes the UK a lot less, it makes it more expensive to invest in the UK. So the way we solve this problem is we come up with a follow-up, a wealth tax.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Hold on. How the fuck does taxing the rich encourage the rich to invest in the country? That doesn't make any sense. Well, I've got logic for this one too. British investments aren't just attractive because they are cheap. In fact, they aren't any cheaper than investing in a country like America, but the reason that they are attractive is because we have a shed load of relatively well-off potential customers, the British middle class. No one is investing in a foreign country that they don't think they're gonna get their returns back on. And right now, we are rapidly heading towards a scenario where our general public can't afford to buy a lot of the things that these guys are sending over, which means that gradually we are becoming less attractive as an investment opportunity because we simply can't buy the things, right? Think of it this way. The issue is, because our boat is being completely drained, the middle class is rapidly disappearing, and it's robbing the country of its most valuable asset, which is its people. If 68 million people can hardly afford to buy a house, then they're not gonna buy whatever these foreign investors are selling. That is what drives investment into well-off countries like the US, like Germany, like the UK. It's our ability to buy what they're selling. Introducing a wealth tax on the rich is going to help reverse the flow of money back towards the working class, the middle class, and the government. And all we have to do is give the rich a pretty simple choice. Pay 2% of tax on your wealth and your assets and stuff like that. Or you can sell all of them, fuck off to whichever tax haven you decide that you want to go and live in, and get rid of 100% of your profits because, you got your little feeling shirt. Sorry, little baby, you got your feeling shirt, Elon Musk. Oh no, I guess you're gonna have to go somewhere else. Now, one thing I will say is I didn't really touch on the currently blamed foreigners that are causing the issues with our country, taking all of our houses and reducing the housing market availability, which is pushing up the price. All of that is bullshit, by the way. And I think that understanding that is crucial. So you're very lucky that I have a separate video explaining everything about that right here.